Marcus woke up the way most people wake up after a crash landing on an unfamiliar planet, which is to say badly, with a headache the size of a small moon and absolutely no idea where he was. The ceiling was wrong. That was the first thing his brain registered before anything else. Not wrong like a water stain or a weird paint color. Wrong like someone had designed it by looking at a description of a ceiling written by someone who had never actually seen one. It curved in directions that felt unnecessary. It glowed softly in a color that did not have a name in English. And it was very, very tall. Marcus blinked. Then he blinked again. Then he said, out loud, to no one in particular, well. This is new. He tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. The bed beneath him was firm in all the wrong places, like it had been engineered specifically to support a body type that was not his. There were 3 moons visible through the window to his left. 3. He counted them twice just to be sure he was not still unconscious. He was not. There were definitely 3 moons hanging in a pale violet sky outside a window that was shaped like a hexagon. Marcus lay back down and stared at the wrong ceiling. Okay, he said. Okay. Fine. They came in about 40 seconds later, which told him they had been watching. 3 of them. The first was tall, gray-blue, and had 4 arms arranged in a way that somehow looked completely natural once you got over the initial shock of it. He moved with the specific energy of a doctor who had seen everything, fixed most of it, and was tired in a way that went all the way down to whatever alien doctors had instead of bones. This was Dr. Velik, though Marcus did not know his name yet. He just thought of him immediately as the one in charge, because some things translate across species without any help. The second was small, round in a pleasant sort of way, and clutching a tablet device that was beeping softly and consistently in what Marcus would later learn was the alien equivalent of an error message repeating itself. This was Nurse Priel, who had the expression of someone who had prepared very carefully for their shift today and was already aware that the preparation had been useless. The third walked in last, moved to the corner of the room, produced a clipboard from somewhere, and began writing. He did not look up. He did not introduce himself. He simply wrote. This was Administrator Zorvith, and Marcus recognized his energy immediately too. Every hospital in the known universe, apparently, had one of him. They gathered around his bed. They scanned him with devices that hummed and clicked. They whispered to each other in a language that sounded like rainfall and mathematics. Marcus watched them do this for a moment. Good morning, he said. Or whatever time it is. Sorry for the inconvenience of almost dying on your floor. The translator implant they had apparently fitted him with while he was unconscious processed this and delivered it in their language. There was a pause. Priel's tablet beeped 3 times in rapid succession. Zorvith stopped writing. Dr. Velik turned slowly and looked at Marcus the way you look at something when you are not entirely sure it is real. Marcus would later learn that the translation had come out roughly as a formal declaration of grievance combined with a self-deprecating acknowledgement of cosmic burden, which in their culture was something you said at funerals and nowhere else. He had essentially woken up and immediately delivered a eulogy for himself. He grinned at them. I'm Marcus, he said. Nice to meet you all. Priel made a sound that was not quite a word. The examination that followed was, by any reasonable measure, a catastrophe. A fascinating catastrophe, but a catastrophe. Dr. Velik was professional about it. That much had to be said for him. He approached every impossible reading with the composure of someone who had decided, somewhere around the 3rd beeping error, that composure was the only thing he had left. He pressed a device against Marcus's chest and watched the readout. He pressed it again. He looked at it for a long time. Your heart, he said carefully, through the translator. Is it always doing that? Doing what? Marcus asked. That, said Dr. Velik, and turned the screen so Marcus could see it. The readout showed his resting heart rate, perfectly normal for a human, displayed against what was apparently a galactic medical standard. By that standard, Marcus was in moderate cardiac distress and had been for his entire life. "That's just my heart rate," Marcus said. "That's normal." The word normal did something to the room. Priel wrote something on her tablet. Zorvith added a line to his clipboard. Dr. Velik moved on with the expression of a man filing something away to deal with emotionally at a later date. His body temperature read as a persistent low-grade fever. His bone density was so far above their standard range that the machine displayed it not as a number but as a symbol that Dr. Velik explained, with some difficulty, meant the measurement had exceeded the expected parameters for biological tissue. Marcus flexed his hand and said, "Huh," and Dr. Velik watched him do it with an expression that was difficult to categorize. Then they found the appendix. Priel gasped. An actual gasp. She looked at the scan, looked at Marcus, looked back at the scan. "This organ," she said. "What does it do?" "Nothing," Marcus said. Silence. "It does nothing?" Dr. Velik repeated. "Well, it used to do something, maybe, a long time ago. Now it just sits there. Sometimes it gets infected and we take it out. Otherwise we just leave it." Zorvith was writing very quickly now. "You carry a non-functional organ," Dr. Velik said slowly, "that occasionally attempts to kill you, and your solution is to leave it there until that happens." "Pretty much," Marcus said cheerfully. He then mentioned the wisdom teeth. "Extra teeth," he explained. Teeth that grew in the back of the jaw where there was no longer room for them because the human jaw had gotten smaller over time but had not gotten the message to stop making the teeth. So they grew in sideways sometimes. Or they got impacted. Or they just caused pain for years until someone cut them out. The room was quiet for a moment that stretched longer than it should have. Dr. Velik sat down. Not in a chair that was nearby. He actually moved across the room to find a chair and sat down in it deliberately. Marcus watched him do this. Evolution, Marcus offered helpfully, is kind of a messy process. Zorvitha's pen moved for a full 90 seconds without stopping. The blood work broke two machines. The first diagnostic unit flagged Marcus's blood chemistry and then displayed an error that Dr. Velik later described as the machine essentially throwing up its hands. The backup unit ran the same sample, processed it for longer, and then quietly classified Marcus as 3 distinct species simultaneously and also possibly a reactive compound that should be stored below room temperature. 2 additional specialists were called in. Dr. Feneth arrived looking alert and curious. That alertness would not survive the next 20 minutes, but he came in with it. The other specialist, a quiet figure named Researcher Ovax, brought additional equipment and immediately began taking notes without being asked, which suggested she had been briefed on the way over and had made her peace with chaos. While all of this was happening, Marcus's stomach growled. "Is there any food?" he asked. Nobody answered. They were all looking at a screen. "Hey," Marcus said. "Food? Anything?" Priel, without looking up from her tablet, reached into a supply cabinet and handed him something that looked like a purple cracker. Marcus looked at it. He looked at her. She was still not looking at him. He shrugged and ate it. The room went still. Every person in it was now watching him chew. He chewed. He swallowed. He looked around at 6 alien medical professionals staring at him in total silence. "It's fine," he said. "Little dry. But fine." Priel filed the empty cracker packet later as a medical artifact. This was not a joke. It is currently in their records. Dr. Feneth, who had been quietly reviewing Marcus's intake report in the corner, looked up with the expression of a man who had found something he needed to ask about carefully. "When you were brought in," he said. "The injuries listed here." He paused. "You had been moving around for 2 days before you were found?" "Yeah," Marcus said. "I mean, I knew something was probably cracked. But I could still walk, so." You knew, Dr. Feneth repeated, that a bone was broken. Pretty sure, yeah. And you walked on it. I mean, what else was I going to do? This was not a question the way Marcus said it. It was a statement. Dr. Feneth stared at him. Then he asked Marcus to rate his pain level when he had first arrived, on a scale that the translator helpfully explained to Marcus went from 1, meaning minimal discomfort, to 10, meaning a level of pain that in their medical literature was described as incompatible with coherent thought. Marcus thought about it. 4, he said. Maybe a 4.5. Nobody moved. Zorvith had stopped writing. He was simply holding his pen above the clipboard, not moving, staring at Marcus. Dr. Velik turned around from the screen he had been studying very slowly, like a man who had heard something and needed to confirm with his own eyes that the person who said it was still standing there looking perfectly relaxed. A 4. Marcus noticed the silence. Is that bad? He asked. Everyone in the room looked at everyone else in the room. Nobody said anything. Somewhere in the middle of all of this, Dr. Velik asked about human illness. Just generally. How often, what kind, how serious? He had the tone of someone who was building a picture and did not fully want to see what it looked like when it was finished. Marcus explained the common cold. A virus, he said. Does nothing fatal, just makes you feel terrible for about a week. Sore throat, congestion, exhaustion. Then it goes away. Your body defeats it. Then you get it again, usually within the year. Sometimes twice in the same winter. You get it repeatedly, Dr. Velik said. Every year, pretty much. Some people more. And there is no permanent resolution. Well, not for the cold specifically. We have vaccines for other stuff. You basically show your immune system a piece of the threat so it knows what to look for, and then if the real thing shows up, your body already knows how to destroy it. Dr. Velik looked at Marcus the way you look at a very small animal that has just done something that should have been impossible. Not with fear. With a specific, quiet kind of awe that has some alarm mixed into it. Marcus was in the middle of a story about his friend Darius, who had broken his arm during a football game in college, finished the last quarter, helped carry equipment to the bus, and then mentioned to someone on the ride back that his arm felt weird, at which point it was discovered to be broken in 2 places. Marcus was laughing while telling this story. He was laughing the way people laugh about things that happen to someone they love, with warmth and familiarity, because to him this was just a funny memory about Darius. He trailed off when he noticed nobody else was laughing. He looked around the room. Dr. Velik. Nurse Priel. Administrator Zorvith. Dr. Feneth. Researcher Ovax. The other specialist whose name he had not caught. All of them were looking at him. Not with confusion, exactly. Not with horror, exactly. With something that sat in the space between those two things, something that did not have a clean name. Marcus stopped laughing. Dr. Velik said, very quietly, your species does this voluntarily. It was not a question. Marcus opened his mouth. Closed it. Does what, exactly? Continues, said Dr. Velik. Through all of it. You just. Continue. The room was completely silent. Outside the hexagonal window, all 3 moons were still there, unhelpfully. Marcus looked at Dr. Velik for a moment. Then he said, I mean. Yeah. What else would we do? Nobody had an answer to that either. Discharge took longer than it should have because nobody could figure out how to write the report. Their standard forms had categories. The categories assumed certain things about patients, things like a body temperature range, a pain response curve, a list of active organs with corresponding functions. Marcus had broken most of the assumptions on the first page alone. Zorvith had now filled 17 pages of his own notes and was looking at his pen with the quiet grief of a man who had run out of ways to be surprised and was now simply documenting. Priel handed Marcus a form to sign. He signed it. Then he looked up and said, "So who do I send my insurance information to?" Priel looked at him. "Insurance," she repeated. "Yeah. Like, for the bill. The payment. For all the treatment." There was a pause while everyone processed this through the translator and then processed it again because it had not made more sense the second time. The concept of paying for medical care after the fact, through a third-party system that may or may not cover what was done, depending on a contract signed in advance, was apparently not something that mapped cleanly onto Galactic standard practice. Marcus looked at their faces and made a decision. "Never mind," he said. "Forget I said anything." He stood up. His joints popped. His knees cracked. His spine made a sound that caused Priel to flinch backward by about half a step. Marcus stretched his arms above his head with the satisfied groan of someone whose body was reminding him it was still operational, and turned to the room. "Thank you," he said, and he meant it genuinely and warmly, without any sarcasm, because whatever else had happened in this room, they had put him back together and they had done it without any idea what they were dealing with. "Seriously. All of you. Thank you." Dr. Velik stopped him at the door. "We will be publishing a report," he said. "About you. About what we observed." Marcus laughed. "A real one, full and easy." "Yeah," he said. "That tracks." He walked out. His footsteps faded down the corridor. The six of them stood in the hallway and watched the door he had gone through, and the hallway beyond it, and the space where he had been. Dr. Feneth said, quietly, "I need to lie down." Zorvith was still writing. Priel picked up the empty purple cracker packet from the counter, put it in a small specimen bag, labeled it carefully, and placed it in the archive drawer. She did this without irony. It felt important. Dr. Velik stood at the door for a long moment. Then he turned to the rest of his staff, and in the particular tone of a doctor who has revised his entire understanding of something he thought he knew, said, "Humans are not patients." He looked back at the empty hallway. "They are events." Nobody disagreed. Zorvith did not even look up. He just kept writing.